Well, we're late into the recruiting season as it relates to the transfer portal. I know that's kind of odd to say considering it opened up last week, 7 days ago, essentially. So, what is there out there left for Georgia to do? Here's just a real quick recap of how things have been going for the Dogs. I'm going to put it on the screen real quick. Of course, last night, Chris Peel leaving Georgia. That was announced today. I said last night. But 14 guys going out of the program, 10 coming in. Most notably, I would say lately for sure, this trio of guys in the spring that have come in, that was a real big pickup for Georgia. I know Matt has talked about Josh McCray, the running back who's coming in. I couldn't agree more. I think that's going to help Georgia in the grand scheme of things with making sure that they have what they need at running back. And, Branson Robinson leaving, they've had 4 guys go out and 3 come in. So that means that they are right on top of the number or very close to, or perhaps one under. And they're not going to go into the season under at scholarship level. So what's left out there and who could Georgia still attack? The long story short is there's not a lot left out there. I'm going to talk about 4 players real quick, but I think the likelihood of them going to Georgia, is maybe not ideal. So one is Bernard Gooden, who's at USF, or who was at USF from Montgomery. He's a 6'1", 280-pound defensive lineman. That seems a little small to me, but he is one of the few guys that's sort of still out there hanging out in the portal. At wide receiver, BYU's got a player, Keelan Marion, who just left not that long ago. He played at Grayson. I think he's a person to pay attention to. I don't think that I am skeptical Georgia with their current situation at receiver would go there. But, I don't know. A Kissimmee, Florida native from Osceola High School, really at Orlando, Kissimmee. Jeremiah Wilson, another guy to sort of pay attention to from Houston. These guys could all play immediately at Georgia if they, because of the fact that they're not at SEC schools. So Wilson is someone to pay attention to. And then Emmanuel Carnley from Miami, a player who could also come in as well. He's from California, Los Alamos High School out there. He announced that he was going into the portal yesterday on Monday. So there's still guys trickling out there. I think that for Georgia right now, and I'm just that 4 is just 4. It doesn't mean that they will hit at Georgia and get there. They could it could not work out for them, but probably they'll wind up somewhere pretty solid. If that's at a Ohio State or Georgia or Texas level, I couldn't say. A lot of guys right now, the problem with the portal, if you want to call it a problem, the problem with the portal in the spring is those are less desirable players. They're not the least desirable. They're less desirable. Why? Well, there's restrictions on them as it relates to the SEC. First of all, if you're an SEC player and you are in the portal, you cannot play in the SEC that fall. So, anybody, Nico, someone from Arkansas, any of these, you would have had to have done it. What Damon Wilson did was he left in the winter. That means he can play at Mizzou this fall. So anybody, so there's some restrictions in the spring. There's also this House settlement. Now, people don't know. I think people, when you say the House, you immediately think the House of Representatives in D.C. No, that's the plaintiff's name in this case. That is dragging out a little longer than I think people would like. Now, they're getting used to it and when I say they, I mean institutions, conferences, the NCAA, they're all preparing for this settlement that is on the brink of happening. So does that really affect the portal? I mean, I couldn't say it really does, but there's one other piece to a larger puzzle that you're going to have to take a look at all in all, because we pretty much know what that number is going to be, about $20 million, $20.5 million. That, knowing what that number would be for schools to pay their players globally, all players, that's not going to stop somebody from coming in or leaving. So the number is going to be the same around college football. What could be trickier is what's coming after all of that. Now, that's a different ball game. So that part of okay, the settlement has gone through. There's nothing that's going to prevent it. It's class action, all this stuff. So that all, once that gets settled, there could come a time where there's some other stuff that follows that after the fact, but that wouldn't affect these portal guys. I think if you're Kirby, Stacey Searles, Bobo, anybody, Glenn Schumann, Trey Scott, all these guys who are at Georgia, are there places that you can help your program right now? Because Georgia has not made a practice of rebuilding through the portal. They have plugged holes or perceived holes in the portal. When you look at, think about last season and who came in and who's just wasn't even at Georgia for a year. Michael Jackson is one of them. You had Jake Pope is one of them. But the rest of these guys, whether you're and Jaden Rashad is another. So 3 guys in and out. They basically rented a season at Georgia, and they're going to places that are not going to be as good if they've even wound up at places. I think Jake Pope's at UNLV. I don't think Rashada has gone anywhere yet. But the bulk of these players, Humphrey, Jamal Jarrett, Rhett, Bowles, and Pimba, Anthony Evans, Wilson, Branson Robinson, Nitro Tuggle, and Marquise Easley, as well as Chris Peel. These were all guys who signed at Georgia. And so of the 14, something like 11 or 10 of the 11 were signees that are leaving and going out. Well, inevitably, what is going to happen, even though Georgia essentially is building their program through high school, they are salt and peppering it with the portal. At the beginning of this thing, that really wasn't the case. I mean, you think about transfers had made a big impact at Georgia. Don't confuse yourself. From the year 2020 to 2022, the starting quarterback in all of those games except one was a guy who transferred into Georgia, whether it be Stetson Bennett or JT Daniels. Okay? So, with the exception of Dwan Mathis, who eventually transferred out, all those guys were transfer guys. So I don't want to act like the transfers have not mattered. But like De'Aaron Kendrick, he was a one and done basically at Georgia. He won a national championship. When you think about guys they brought in, Dom Lovett, he wasn't one and done. He was here for 2 years. He was here for as long as he was at Mizzou, if I'm not mistaken. So this is the sort of mixed gumbo. I was going to say jambalaya, but it's a little bit more like gumbo. But you do have to still have your starch. You have to have the rice that goes at the bottom of the bowl, or you're not going to get everything you need. So the guys I mentioned earlier, there's really no telling what's left that would be quality for Georgia. What's left that's quality. Because at this stage, there's just nobody out there it is very unlikely you're going to find somebody who's going to be a starting player at this point. Okay? It is possible that the 3 guys that they signed over the weekend on Easter, it is possible that they could start in moments. I think McCray would have the best shot, and maybe Mendoza, but I don't know. I would say Elo Mendoza from Army. I'm sure I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but we don't get pronunciations with transfers. So there's that. I think it's possible he could start for Georgia, but the vast majority of these guys who are coming in, late, they're not going to start. They will play, but like Zachariah Branch, he better get ready to really play. Same thing with Noah Thomas. I think Jaden Harris could have something to say about this season. Maybe Maddox from UAB. These guys, all 3 of them came in, or 4 of them, I should say, came in on December on January 7th. So not that far after the Sugar Bowl, and the Branches came on the 5th. Georgia needed some explosion on their offensive side of the ball. With Thomas, Branch, they got that. They added that to what they have. They're going to need to stay healthy offensively and defensively too, but they need to stay healthy offensively. There's never really been a season at Georgia that I can recall where the defense was just not good. Like, there's been time under Kirby Smart. There's been times where they've not been as good as the season before. But even in 2020 and 2016, those were not Kirby-level defenses, if you want to call them that. But they were pretty good still. And, you weren't just running up and down the field on them. 2016 had some work to do. They were playing some guys back there that just wouldn't play today. But in today's world, that's what they sort of have left to do in the portal. If there is any movement, I'm not sure that there will be any movement. I think I'm not sure that there will be any movement, but I pay attention to where do they need some help and who are the people, non-SEC players that can help them. It's not a long list.